Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back again. A second live stream in the same day. What am I even thinking?
That's
Welcome
2 days
back.
in a row.
2 days in a row. I've done 2 live streams, and 2 days in a row, Jeff's been on my channel. So welcome back, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm amazing. Yeah, it's been pretty humbling the response I've gotten from my story yesterday, and my subscriber base has gone really up, and some of the comments and messages I've got have been very heartwarming, as well as a little bit of coffee money sent my way as well, which is, I really wasn't expecting much, but it sure does make it easier to do this kind of thing, and feel like what I'm doing is very valuable. So
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone on SBTV has outright said that I'm here for the money, right? Like none of us are doing this to make money. Obviously, it helps because there are a lot of costs associated with running a YouTube channel. You have to pay for the StreamYard subscription, video editing. Like there are costs attached to it, but the money allows us to kind of spend more time doing it, because then I don't have to worry about making that much money from my day job, for example. So actually it's a self-fulfilling kind of purpose, which is great, and it's always helpful to have that financial support so that we don't have to spend tons of money on getting the channel out there, because what's important is what we're talking about and the message, right?
Yeah, I mean, I bought this microphone and this webcam for this channel before I had any subscribers, so my purpose is just to get that message out. Anything extra is just a bonus.
I was going to say, how come you have such a good mic and camera and everything? And I thought maybe you're a streamer from, another life or something, but no, you got it just for the channel.
For sure. No.
Yeah.
No, I bought it specifically for this. I managed to find some stuff on sale, but still wasn't cheap. And yeah, it's going to get some good use though.
Oh, for sure. And I think just to introduce you again, for those of you who didn't see our stream yesterday, Jeff is a former Scientologist, a Canadian former Scientologist, who essentially, long story short, was kidnapped and trafficked as a child to go and work for the Church of Scientology in Los Angeles. And yesterday we started talking about his story and kind of touch the tip of the iceberg, I suppose. And Jeff has started his own channel, PTS for Life. He's now a YouTube SPTV creator. So before we get any further, if you are watching this on my channel, please go and watch this instead from Jeff's channel, PTS for Life. There's a link in the live chat so that he can get A, the subscribers he needs, but B, the watch hours, so that he can get monetized and start doing more of this sort of stuff. So Jeff, how are you feeling about in response to the video yesterday? You said you had a nice few comments and copies and stuff. How are you feeling? It must have been good to get some of that off your chest.
Yeah. I've been so blown away with the messages that I've received and people thanking me. And I don't want to say I'm doing this for selfish reasons. I'm partially doing it for, therapy of it. But as I'm telling these stories, more messages come in, and I think, okay, well, that's a good idea. Let me think about that. And then more memories pop out. And then now there's more stories to tell. So it's really cool to have different people's perspectives on what I'm going through, what you're going through, and so forth, that aren't necessarily like ingrained in the original Scientology thinking. And that opens up new avenues of thinking for myself, which just makes me ultimately a better person. So it's been surreal so far, and almost yesterday after our interview, kind of felt a sense of like disassociation. Like, what did I just do? What doors did I just open for myself? And I mean, it's only going to be good for myself psychologically, and any effect I can have outside to stop people from going into Scientology. Or I mean, the ultimate dream would be for someone if I could help someone get out. That would be, if I got a message like that, it's all worth it,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's been a cool experience so far.
Yeah, I have like a personal policy, if you like, of drop everything. Like if I ever receive a text or an email or anything like that from someone saying I'm in Scientology and I need help getting out, whatever it is I'm doing, even if I'm on a live stream, I will end the stream, give them a call and direct them to the Aftermath Foundation or help in any way that I can, because we've been through this experience and we're lucky enough to be on the other side. So we understand what it's like to go through that, and we help each other, right? And that's what we're trying to do as a community. And it's great to have you as part of this. And I'm really excited to see what stuff you're going to put out on your channel. How many videos are you at now? I think, is it your third or fourth one you put out yesterday about treatment?
So 3 recorded ones, and then this will be a second live stream. I do feel a lot more comfortable with the live streams. I like the conversational aspect. When I'm sitting there recording myself to do a pre-recorded video, there's always that, oh, that didn't go well. Delete, do it again. Delete, do it again. And it's just so much more time consuming. But lots of ideas, and I'm hoping to get onto other channels as well, so there can be a different perspective and maybe different interactions to open up different avenues as well. I mean, I love talking with you, though. We've chatted quite a bit, and you're such a kind, supportive person. So
thank you.
I'm really glad that we're having these conversations.
Absolutely. And I'm doing my bit to try and promote you as well and get other people to have you on. I emailed Mark and Claire yesterday. I texted Aaron. I'm going to try and wave the flag and get you on their radar, because it would be great to, I always like, even I've told my story many times, right? But the conversation I had with Chris Shelton was very different to the conversation I had with Aaron Smith-Levin or with other people, because different people bring different perspectives and angles to it. So the more people you can engage with and more channels you can appear on, the better, really. So maybe that's something to get you guys in the chat to help out with. Why don't you encourage the other SPTV creators to have Jeff on, and maybe we can see more of him on SPTV. That would be great.
I love that.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit about psychiatry and Scientology's teachings on psychiatry and their activism work, if you like. So before we get into your story, should we give a bit of background into what Scientology teaches about psychiatry?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, and this is, I was actually making a video about this earlier, and I kind of scrapped a little bit once I found out we were going to talk about it. I'll
Catherine
come on
here
with you two in the next. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Catherine. I don't know if you know Catherine Olsen. She's a former SEAL member that worked in a Class 5 org at one point. So she has a really good perspective, actually. And so it'd be great to do a video together for sure.
Yeah. She had made a comment and I responded to it. I'd love to chat with her.
Amazing.
So psychiatry, in any kind of policy that LRH wrote, any kind of books, it's the most evil thing in the world, but it goes beyond just our world. His theory was that psychiatrists are beings, so thetans, that are so degraded or like bad people that all they want to do is destroy everything. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's good, it must be destroyed. And with L. Ron Hubbard's view, Scientology is the best thing ever. Therefore, that's why so much attention gets put on it, where he feels they're the biggest enemy ever. And if they were gone, literally everything would be solved. Any problems in the world, war, violence in schools, everything is completely at the bottom. The root cause of it is psychiatry and psychology. And this is like on the whole track. So from the beginning of thetans, whatever that is, they've just been going through time and just destroying everything good. And now that there's finally, according to him, a solution, they're going berserk, and they want it destroyed. So that's why they fight against psychiatry so much.
Yeah, psychiatry is seen as like the ultimate SP, enemy of the church, because Scientology is meant to be dealing with the spirit, the spiritual being, and psychiatry just gets in the way of that. And, it's important to differentiate between the genuine psychiatric abuses that occur in the real world and helpful psychiatry. And what Scientology don't do is allow for that understanding that psychiatry can and does help people. They put them all into the one basket of it's abusive and it's horrible. I'm not denying the fact that there is abuse and stuff that goes on in the world of psychiatry, but that doesn't mean all psychiatrists are bad. Scientology paint this picture that all psychiatrists want to do is put you on mind-altering drugs that permanently affect you as a being, and they want to make money off selling you drugs, and it messes you up in the head and it doesn't actually help you. And there is some truth to that, in that psychiatric drugs do alter the way your mind works. That's because they're meant to do that, and they're meant to help you with a chemical imbalance or whatever in your mind because of depression or anxiety. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. And there's a difference between abusing the prescription and abusing the medication, and actually using it for like genuine help and benefit to people. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people that can walk into a doctor and say, hey, I'm feeling a bit low, and walk away with a prescription for a drug. And that does happen, but that doesn't mean people don't genuinely get helped by it, right?
Yeah, totally. And kind of on that note, my dad, just as a little background, my dad was the executive director for the Citizens Commission on Human Rights in Vancouver for quite a few years. And I think actually recently he's still doing it. He's kind of doing like cookie cutter articles to newspapers if there's a story about a shooting or something that they say is caused by the person being on psychiatric drugs. Back when I was kind of having a bit of doubt about Scientology, I kind of got into a bit of a argument with him about, I mean, how can all psychiatrists and psychiatrists be that bad? Like, if you think about the statistical chance of that, it doesn't make sense, right? And he, obviously he would have none of it, because in his mind, it's just a blanket argument. They're all bad, period, because that's what LRH taught. And it actually caused a bit of a rift between him and I, because I couldn't agree with it. Despite being raised with that thought, it was so unbelievable to me that many people were that bad.
What made you, like, what gave you that impression, if you've been raised with this belief? Like, had you done research or something into it, or did you just think, I don't buy that for some reason?
I think it was just my critical thinking kind of popping out. Like I said, I was kind of in that doubt condition regarding Scientology, and that had happened quite a few times throughout my life. I just thought about it, which is the answer to a lot of the stuff in regards to Scientology. If you actually really just sit down and think about it without a pre-existing idea and critically think about it, it doesn't make sense, and you'll clear that thought. But yeah, just kind of, that was my thought at the time.
And the Citizens Commission on Human Rights is one of Scientology's front groups, right? Yeah. So Scientology operate lots of different front groups that they say are independent but sponsored by Scientology, but they are very much all part of this one conglomerate of what is the Church of Scientology. So there's like Narconon, which is a drug rehabilitation program. There's the Truth About Drugs. There's Criminon, which is going into prisons and helping reform, people in jail and criminals. There's lots of these different, Youth for Human Rights. There's lots of these different groups that claim to go and help people, and that's how Scientology come across as, hey, look, we're helping people. We're going out there and we're championing human rights. And actually, it's just it's a front group. It's a way of luring people into Scientology, and it's a way of dismissing attackers. No, we don't harm people and manipulate people, because look at all this great work we're doing championing human rights. When actually, when you look at it, a lot of human rights abuses occur in Scientology, particularly in the C organization, because they take away your right to ownership to fruit your own goods and things. There's a lack of sleep and all of that sort of stuff. So it's a way of dismissing attackers. It's a PR thing. In fact, CCHR and these front groups are actually organized by the Office of Special Affairs, OSA, because they are PR activities, not genuine, wanting to help people. It's a PR thing. And so your dad was in charge of CCHR, which is the front group that's all about taking on psychiatrists and, protesting and that sort of thing. So yeah, what was that like with your dad and what he does from a very early age? You must have been exposed to a lot of this sort of stuff.
Yeah. So basic story with my dad was he was involved in some psychiatric treatment when he was prior to Scientology, which was in the late 70s, I believe he got into it in Toronto. He was given electric shock and I think he was committed at some point, but that kind of sparked off his hatred towards them. So there is definitely that personal aspect to it that gave him the drive. When he came, in Toronto, he was involved in DSA, which at that point was called the Guardian's Office. And it's the same thing, it's just a different name. There is no difference. So then when he came to Vancouver, he kind of took over those responsibilities of CCHR and running everything in regards to it. So organizing the psych bus, responding to media, and discussing anything that's connected with that arm of DSA. He would drag me along to demonstrations. So he was pretty big on like media stunts. So doing something shocking. One of the biggest memories I have in my mind of that time was I was probably 9 or 10, something like that. A very young child. And there was this other lady who was in Scientology. I believe she has passed on now, but she was very involved in any kind of psychiatric bus. And they got her dressed up in a white lab coat, like a doctor. And she was a very surly looking woman, let's just say that. And they made a large, like, round cushion that was in the shape of a psychiatric pill. I believe it said Ritalin on it. And they posed for the media of her shoving it down my throat. Not literally, but like pretending to. And I don't think it made the front page, but it was prominently displayed in, I believe it was a Vancouver Sun newspaper. And that was the kind of stuff that I was put through to do in the name of CCHR, even though I'm just a child.
I kind of want to find this picture. Is it online anyway?
Oh man, I've been trying. I almost feel like you might
dig it out.
You might need to go to, or I might need to actually go to find like the actual archives or microfiche or something. We're talking like the early 90s. So,
well, for any of you watching that likes to do a bit of a research project, maybe you can help us out. If you can dig out this picture of Jeff, that would be fascinating to see. There are loads of like examples and pictures online of CCHR protests and, you know, people holding up banners. They did a demonstration in London a few years ago where they got someone dressed up as like a stereotypical psychiatrist, you know, with like spiky grey hair, like wacky scientist kind of vibe, with a white lab coat, and walking around with like blood all over him and a chainsaw, and like walking down the streets and, you know, showing this is what psychiatry is. There's loads of examples of this, but if we can find the one that you're in, that would be fascinating.
I'd be amazed if you could find it. I mean, I know where it is. I know where there's a copy. It's in DSA right now. They never get rid of any files ever. So it's there. If someone's in DSA right now wants to go grab it.
Yeah, let's say hi to Osa. If you're watching, Osa, how's it going? If you want help getting out, the Aftermath Foundation will help you.
Yeah.
And we're not here to judge or criticize or anything. So yeah, you know, if Osa, if you're watching, send us a picture and then get out.
If there's anybody in the Vancouver area that wants to get out, I have a spare bedroom. You are all welcome.
Talking of Vancouver, escaping the cultiverse, good old Gabriel Toth here, someone that you know quite well, used to work with at Vancouver Org, right?
And I imagine she's probably been involved in some psych bus in her past as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about CCHR and the drug-free marshals, because you dropped a little mention yesterday to going and as a child and trying to get celebrities to sign a drug-free pledge, right? Do you want to maybe tell us that story again and a little bit of an example of other things you did as a kid to promote this anti-psychiatry message?
Yeah. So with the drug-free marshal pledge itself, this was separate from CCHR. It's in the same basic department, DSA, but it's a different activity, obviously, different front group.
Because that's interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but I'd find that in itself quite interesting, because in the UK we have the Truth About Drugs Foundation for a Drug-Free World, and we have CCHR and all of those ones I mentioned earlier. drug-free marshals is not one that I'd ever heard of prior to our talk yesterday. So I wonder if that's Canada specific or whether it's just something we didn't activate in the UK.
So I think Truth About Drugs superseded drug-free marshals to a certain degree.
Right. Okay.
So drug-free marshals was predominantly geared towards younger kids.
Mm-hmm.
So the logo, I'm not sure if you've seen or not. It's like this kind of freckly faced kid with a, oversized sheriff star, kind of like doing this, like I've pledged kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Truth About Drugs is a bit more mature and
Mm-hmm.
geared towards, I think, more high school and then maybe adolescent, early 20s kind of thing, just to appeal to that different demographic. I believe Drug Free Marshals started in about 1993, and I was doing it in 1996 when I was in charge of that in the Vancouver area. And I would just literally, to get stats, it's so dumb. Like I forget the exact name of the stat, but it comes down to opinion leader points. So an opinion leader is somebody in an area who people listen to, like a celebrity, congressperson, etc. So this position was essentially just a PR position. And the person who was in charge of me, her name was Joanna. She was the public relations director or something like that. And yeah, that was my stat. And so the only way I could get my stat up was to go and find A-list celebrities or internationally known. And if you're locally known, it's like 1 point. If you're internationally known, it's 5 points or 6 points. So the more international people I could find, the better. And obviously, like I mentioned yesterday, some people that signed were Chris Farley, and that. So back in the day, we used to have a Planet Hollywood in Vancouver. It was on Robson Street, and I was not a Chris Farley fan. I knew who he was. I might have seen one of his movies, and I'm waiting in line outside on Robson Street, which is like a very trendy area, and obviously a Planet Hollywood there. A lot of people are there. Huge lineup, and he comes rolling up on his limo. And any fans of Chris Farley know he's an overtop character. He plays the van down by the river guy, just absolutely nuts. And that's exactly how he was. Like, it was almost like that character fell out of this limousine and just started doing crazy shit on the street. Right. And I'm just like, whoa, what's going on here? And who is this guy? And what's, and then later I became a fan of his, but I waited in line for about, I think, 2 hours as it snaked its way into the autograph area. And I believe that day was when Chris Farley and David Hasselhoff were there. So yeah, that was kind of that. And then I would just go to film shoots, film locations, and just walk on the set and just say, hey, is there anybody? Yeah, there he is.
I'm just putting up, this is Chris Farley for anyone who doesn't know. This is the guy that we're talking about here.
Yeah. He was quite the artist. He had his own unique style, and it's unfortunate that he did fall victim to the drug use. He died of a speedball overdose.
Oh gosh!
Shortly after signing the pledge.
Wow.
Yeah, so I would just kind of go around and say, "Hey, my name is Jeff. I'm with Drug Free Marshals, and I'm trying to convince children not to do drugs. And please sign this pledge. Don't ask who I'm associated with." Essentially, I would just avoid the question. And I would actually be drilled, practiced on how to avoid that question.
Do you think they used your youth to their advantage? Because to me, it sounds like if you send an adult to go and do this stuff, there's going to be a little bit more reservedness and I don't know what I'm signing here. But if you send a kid, to run up to a celebrity and be like, hey, I'm trying to stop people do drugs, can you sign my pledge? Most human beings will be like, yeah, sure, like no problem, of course I'll help this little kid with this little project. It's probably some school thing or something. They're not going to think twice about it. So it seems to me like they put you in that position because you can get away with more as a child, right?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of other posts that I could have done, but they put me in that for some reason. I was very, I was a fairly introverted child, but I think just through my constant training routines and like coursework through Scientology, I was able to leave that shell and just be social. Whereas normally I would just be kind of sitting by myself and not super out there and making tons of friends. I wasn't a like a social butterfly by any means, but I think that's why they saw that potential in me, and they used it to their advantage. And they would use these photos in like in promotional materials and try and get stuff in newspapers and so forth with pictures of me and some international celebrity that has no idea what they've truly signed up for. So
I was going to say, like,
use them as well.
yeah, it sounds so like dubious and kind of underhand, really, when they're sending a kid in to get some celebrity to sign a thing that's, well intentioned, right? Yeah, I'm going to pledge not to use drugs and whatever. Okay, great, that's fine. But then to use that celebrity's image as an endorsement for Scientology's campaign without that celebrity knowing, it just seems a bit sly to me, which is exactly what you would expect of the Church of Scientology, right?
Well, I will say too that on the bottom of the pledge, it did say that I give permission to publish this. So.
What was the drilling like that you were put through to avoid the question of, who you're representing?
Well, so in Scientology, as you know, there's a drill of a no answer, basically where you practice not answering a question. A lot of times it involves answering a question with a question. So if you say, who is this involved with? And I would just say something like, this is about getting children off drugs. Is that something that you're interested in doing? And if you just continue to not answer a question, most people will have the politeness to not just push it, where the difference between a normal person and a
is she talking about me or you here, Jeff?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you were adorable at some point. No, the difference between like a normal person in that situation and a Scientologist is I have no problem invading privacy. Your privacy means nothing, and in fact, it's almost a game to get through it and push through. Which that kind of behavior actually followed me as an adult, and something that I've recently learned, that you can't just push and ask those questions if they're not welcome.
It's such a common thing. Like, boundaries are not respected in any way in Scientology, and that's one of those things that took me a long time to like learn and retrain myself of like, firstly, what are boundaries and what are my boundaries, and learn to put them in, and then learn to like respect other people's boundaries as well. Like in Scientology, it's so much like, well, look, what I'm trying to do here is get people off drugs and try and champion the anti-psychiatry message. So who cares if I'm making you a bit uncomfortable or if, whatever, that's irrelevant, because what I'm doing is for the greatest good, for the greatest number of dynamics. And you just blow out that idea of boundaries. It's so hard to like look back and try and come to terms with the fact that you didn't even respect a boundary because you didn't know what boundaries were.
Nope, right? I was never taught boundaries. I mean, it's rude is what it's being. It's being rude. Like, yeah, I'm not telling you something for a reason. Stop asking.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to being in a registration cycle where someone's trying to get you onto a course or auditing. It's no holds barred. Like, you just dig in, and I did lots of that as well. Why aren't you doing this? Like, it's almost like a confessional or a interrogation, trying to find out why. Like, why aren't you interested in doing this? What'd you do? And don't you want this? And yeah, it's rude.
I remember when they were trying to recruit, when I was on staff and they were trying to recruit me to join the SEAL organization, I remember one of the conversations I had with the SEAL recruiter was, I think I mentioned this yesterday, of like, well, you want to help people, right? And you think Scientology helps people, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, why wouldn't you join the SEAL? You're a dick if you don't, because, if you already agree that the SEAL is the best way to help people, if you choose not to do that, then you are choosing to be selfish and you're being a dick. And you kind of go, you get guilt tripped into signing the SEAL contract because they've invaded your boundaries, and whatever excuse you give as to why you don't want to join a SEAL org and whatever, it just gets trampled all over. Like, this is common throughout Scientology.
Totally. Yeah, there's no good reason to not be on course or some sort of service or join the Sea Org or help. Everything, they're all taught that everything has a handling,
Mhm.
to get rid of that objection. It's
Yeah.
part of the sales training.
Exactly. So you were drilled on how to handle these objections.
Yeah.
And did you get much objection from celebrities? Like, did you ever get
No,
many people go, who are you representing, or what are you here for, or anything like
nope.
that? No.
I mean, most of the time I'm accosting them.
Mhm.
I'm just coming up unannounced. Every now and then I'd have to talk my way through security of some sort. But
How did that happen? How did you, were you just, hey, I'm a fan, I'm a kid, I want to go and say hi,
yeah,
and most security would just let you through, right?
I would just tell them what I'm there for. I would
Mhm.
never lie about it. I would just say, this is what I'm here for. I just want to show them this. Are they available? And a lot of times they're like, well, go check. And the celebrities would come out. Like, I believe it was Gillian Anderson. She was like 3 blocks away. I think she was coming out of a dressing room. There's a picture of me somewhere with her in DSA. I don't know if it ever made it into any kind of newspaper or anything, but she was just out of hair and makeup, so she looked phenomenal. This is back in the early X-Files days that
Amazing.
they filmed X-Files up here, and she comes out, and I think I was taller than her, and I'm not a
Wow.
tall guy.
How tall are
5'7".
you, Jeff?
I'm 5'7", so
Okay, I'm five,
just
five, 5'6", so yeah.
okay. There you
So
go.
we're ginger, we're short, and we're ex-Scientologists.
Yeah, all these disadvantages.
I know.
Um,
We didn't have a very good prospect in, in life, did we?
I got pretty lucky. It's all good. What was I gonna say? So yeah, so she signed it, no problem. Posed for the picture, and that was it. There was no argument. So most people didn't say anything because I even wore glasses then, like round, like not trendy like yours, just the dorkiest glasses you can imagine. I think I have a picture of me somewhere from that era, so I should pull that up and reveal it sometime. But
That's something someone said in the comments from our video yesterday, actually, is we look like twins, and if you were to wear glasses, you should find some glasses to put on one stream just to throw people off. But
see
yeah.
if we can just, who can tell us apart.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you managed to kind of get through security and weasel your way in, people like Gillian Anderson, and get them to sign. Were you on your own, or were you with, like, if there are pictures of this, there must have been a team of you or at least one other person to take the picture, because it's a PR thing, right?
So there was another guy. I think he was about 17 or 18. His name was Joel. I don't believe that he's involved in Scientology anymore. He was just a photographer. So, and sometimes there would be times where I'd be alone and I would just ask someone else to take the picture for us. It was a very cookie cutter operation. Like, go there, ask it, take a picture, get out of there. And a lot of times I'd be alone downtown Vancouver at night, because it's probably about 7 blocks away between the organization and this theater I used to go to that used to house a lot of bigger Broadway shows. And I would go hang out in the back in the alley, which is where the back exit was. It's called the Ford Theater. And I would just wait there until it was done. And sometimes it'd be dark. There was just a single light out there. So it was super sketchy for just a teenager to be there downtown Vancouver, all alone.
They just sent you as a kid, and did you get much guidance or advice on how to do this operation, or was it down to you to figure out, like, how, like, did they say to you, go and hang out in this dark alley, or were they just like, look, this is your stat, you need to go and get a celebrity to sign this thing, and then you had to figure out how to do it?
I don't actually know whether I was told to go do the Ford Theater, if I just came up with the idea on my own. As
Okay.
far as the stats go, yeah, I was just kind of, I mean, when you're put on post in Scientology, yes, there is hatting. There's like courses you can do for that post, but you're still expected to do that post properly before you get trained. Like, you're not like, okay, this is you until you're done fully your training and you've proven you've gone through 6 months of on the job training. It's like, no, this is your stat. If it's down, you get in trouble. So you just find ways to make it happen. And frankly, sometimes I would just lie about my stat. I
Yeah.
would just make up who these people were, and I was just trusted that this person was, either local or international. And, you know, obviously without the internet back then.
Gabriel said here, actually, you have no choice but to push people's boundaries or you don't survive on your post and are subjected to punishments. That's so true. It's like, this is your job. This is your stat. Go. You need to make it go right. If you don't have your stats up this week, then you're going to get in trouble and you're off on your own. So you're going to do everything it takes to make sure you get your stat right. And if that means going and hanging out in a dark alley at night as a kid, you know, that's what you're going to do. That's the pressure that they put you under. But the church should have some sort of duty of care over you. And they should surely be like, maybe we shouldn't let this kid go and hang out in a dark alley at nighttime waiting for a celebrity. Like, maybe we should send an adult to go with him to make sure he's safe and he's okay. But there was no regard at all for that sort of thing. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I survived it. But I think probably one of the most interesting times I had was so actually right across from where the Ford Theater was the Vancouver Library, and back then there was a radio station called Z95 FM. Might still exist now, but it's not in the same form. But they would play pop music and so forth, and they were very popular. And there was a DJ. His name was Freeway Frank, and he was probably, I don't know, 35-year-old guy with long ponytail, very still kind of stuck in the 80s a little bit. And I just walked up to the mobile radio booth and just said, hey, this is who I am. I had the big pledge. And I said, can I do an interview? And I did an interview on air live.
Wow.
And it was so cool to be part of that. And he was such a nice guy, and he interviewed me like an actual adult, not just a younger kid. So he really gave me that ability to be who I truly am. And he congratulated me on how well I did and said I do really great in the radio industry. So whether he was just, you know, puffing up my chest or not is one thing, but it was great.
That's one thing that's so big. I know this guy wasn't a Scientologist, but this is something Scientology do, is as a kid, they give you responsibility and validate you, right? They make you feel like, I remember when they gave me the post of director of public book sales, I remember I was like, wow, a director level post, I'm given responsibility here. These guys are seeing me as an adult, as a real human, and seeing me for what I can achieve and what I can do, and not judging me based on my age or looking at me as a kid. And it's a bit of an ego trip. It does fill you with a bit of confidence, and that's one of the appeals Scientology has. So you must have felt quite good as a kid going out and doing these things and getting these celebrities to sign on this document, because Scientology places such a high caliber or high, what's the word? Respect for the celebrity status. And if you can come back with a piece of paper that Gillian Anderson has signed at that peak of the X-Files, which was a huge show at the time, like you must have been like the coolest kid in town, right?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I had a very big chip on my shoulder at the time, and I did feel like I was better than other people. Not necessarily other Scientologists or other staff members, although I did get a decent amount of like gratitude for what I was doing, and definitely a lot of love bombing. However, when I would go into the regular world, I just felt like that everybody else was doing the wrong thing, and they were all, and sorry to use the term, I know it's inappropriate, but they were all just wogs, which is how we talked then, which is a very derogatory term. For them, it basically means that they're just meat. They're just not enlightened enough to see what is truly going on, and it's a very demeaning way to talk about somebody. So that's kind of how my mindset went, due to being in this position, which is not a good way for anyone to grow up. Like it's got to change things that are going on in your brain, like synapses and so forth, and really form who you are as an adult, which is something that I've dealt with the last 10 years as well, is trying to change who I am and find out, like I said yesterday, who I truly am, not who I have been taught to be.
Yeah, and it is a journey to go on that's going to take time, but there's no pressure to, you know, in Scientology, especially when you're brought up in Scientology, you're like, or you're young like I was, It's like everything has to be done now. Like this is, an important mission. So there's no concept of taking your time to develop and learn and grow, because it has to be done yesterday, right?
Yep.
So that's a big learn as well when you come out and going, look, these big questions of who am I, what's my purpose in life, what am I doing? There is no pressure, and it's quite hard to like come to terms with that. You don't need to know the answer to that question now. Like, take your time to figure those questions out in your mind, because there isn't any pressure,
Yeah. I lost my train of thought there. There was a question that kind of caught my attention there regarding, let me just find it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Jeff's question, that's the one there. Yeah, I would say yes. I did feel like I missed a big part of my life.
What's the question? Hold on, sorry, Jeff.
Sorry.
Knowing
that the COS treated you kids and children as adults and gave them adult responsibilities, do you feel you miss a part of your life growing up with other kids?
Mm.
I definitely had aspects of my life that didn't turn out the way it should be. There wasn't a lot of social interaction, like in school, for example. The school I went to was very small, whereas if I had gone to a public school, it would have been a lot more opportunity to network and socialize and learn other cultures. Later on in the school's career, because it was doing so badly with Scientology kids, it would start bringing in ESL children from predominantly from Korea, I think Taiwan and India.
ESL is English as a second language, right?
Yeah. It's not a Scientology term,
despite
the acronym. And so there was a little bit more of that later on, but at that point I was much further gone. I only had a couple of main childhood friends that we would hang out together, but there wasn't a lot of general aspect of just hanging out with regular children. So yes, I do feel like there's a big part of my life that was not fully experienced.
Especially with Scientology, is so all-encompassing, and it smothers you, especially as a kid. Like, I joined Scientology as a teenager, and so yes, I was going to school and everything, but it became such a key important interest in my life, and I was in the org every minute that I could that I wasn't in school. Like, you become surrounded by other Scientologists, and because you have that ego trip of we're doing something really important, I don't want to associate with these kids that aren't on the same mission as me. You end up surrounding yourself with these people, and looking back myself, I can see a similar thing of like, I lost a lot of that time period because I wasn't hanging out with people of my own age, and I wasn't experiencing the things a normal kid would, because I was trying to fucking save the planet. Yeah. Right.
And they're just out doing drugs and committing crimes and video games and all that stuff that's useless. And it kind of brings you back to our original conversation about CCHR and psychiatry. The reason I didn't go to a public school was because of psychiatry, because it's in the schools. And as far as the Church of Scientology is concerned, it runs the schools, right? So
is it such a big fat lie that they tell that teachers push drugs and prescribe Ritalin and this sort of stuff on the kids? And it's so, I can't speak to Canada or America because I didn't go to school there, but my understanding is that a doctor is the only person that can prescribe a drug. And if you're diagnosed with ADHD or something like this, some mental health issue or something, the doctor is the one that will look after your prescription and advise things. And then the school have to cater for those needs to help you in whatever way they can, not push drugs onto you. But that's what Scientology will tell you, right?
Yep. And they'll actually say that school is a farm for future patients, basically. That they create the product of children needing drugs, or are intentionally raising children who need drugs. Like, it's all intentional. And that's the insidious thing about it. When they teach you and you're grown up in this, is it's all intentional. It's not an accident. It's not just, oh, that's the way it turned out. This is what their purpose is,
Mm.
and they must be destroyed.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a bit about your psych busting experience in Scientology? Because, we talked about going and getting signatures and things like this, but you were actually sent on missions to go and protest against psychiatry, right?
Yep. I mean, all Scientologists were back then. It was just part and parcel of the job, where my dad or someone else, sometimes it would be maybe up lines, like the more senior organization might instruct. They find out that there's a psychiatric conference in town, which was a yearly thing, as far as I know. And we would just go out. We'd make picket signs. I'd be making those signs, just big placards on a basic stick, and it would say, "Hide your children. The psychiatrists are in town," and all the rhetoric that the CCHR organization and Scientology pushes. And we would just go. It was actually quite embarrassing. We'd all just march through the town holding these signs, and then they would also usually be like a long banner that the people up front would hold. All the typical stuff.
I'm literally getting up pictures as you're talking about it here. So
Right
this
there.
is one in the UK. This was in Stratford, where the Olympic Village is. You've got pictures from these are all recent ones of CCHR protests and the sort of signs that would be held up. Don't let psychiatrists electro-shock children. And these are the big long banners you're talking about: psychiatry, junk science, and dangerous drugs.
And there's even famous pictures of like Danny Masterson, who's a huge supporter of CCHR, wearing the T-shirt. "Hide your children," I think it is.
I don't know if I can pull it up quickly.
Yeah,
enough,
that's okay. But it's all an agenda and rhetoric. It's not true. The other thing that happened later on was, of course, the Industry of Death Museum opened up, which was in California, but they would have a mobile one where they would rent out like some sort of a facility, like a building that's for lease, just a small office type thing. And they would set this whole thing up. It was set up outside the Vancouver Library as well, 1 or 2 years. And people would just be walking by and they'd just body route them in there and tell them all these lies.
What was your experience of the Industry of Death Museum? You said when we spoke privately, you basically grew up there, right? What was that like as a kid? Because it's not like a normal museum of, nice pictures and artifacts you can look at. It's meant to terrify and scare you into thinking psychiatry is this horrible thing that you should be afraid of. It must have not been nice to see that as a kid.
So to clarify that, I was being a little bit facetious about it. I didn't actually grow up in the museum. That would be horrifying, though. My goodness.
Yeah.
If anyone hasn't been there, you should go. It's worth it. It's horrific, but it is. It really shows you how extreme their beliefs are. Scientology beliefs are. But my growing up with the executive director of CCHR in my household is kind of what I was referring to, where I was inundated with this messaging every single day. And even to the point where we'd be watching like Law and Order or some sort of show where a psychiatrist is convicted of a crime, and my dad would just be cheering it on, like this is a fictional story. This is not something that actually happened. But he would almost take a win out of it, where, oh, we got another one, So that was kind of the way I was growing up, and it really set myself on the wrong path because I wasn't able to reach out when I needed help, when I was feeling, having thoughts of self-harm and so forth. I couldn't do anything about it, and all I could do was be silent. There's nothing I could have done. It would have, if I'd even tried to get help from something other than Scientology, I probably would have been disowned or at the very least gotten in a lot of trouble. Right. So, it wasn't a good way.
That's what's horrible about this belief system that Scientology employs on people when it comes to psychiatry, because yes, there are abuses, and yes, there are things that happen that shouldn't, and you're going to get that in any industry, in any medical field, right? Because there are always going to be opportunities for corruption and that sort of thing. But on like as a whole, psychiatry does help people, especially if you're going through mental trauma or distress and you're having these horrible thoughts and so on, and you need help. If you have grown up with people shoving down your throat that these people are literally the devil and the worst people you could possibly come across, and they just want to drug you and control you, you're not going to turn to those people for help in your darkest times.
No.
And that's what's so harmful and horrible about it, because those are the people you should be turning to for help in those times. And when you believe that Scientology is the only answer, but actually Scientology is the thing that's probably driving a lot of those feelings, it leaves a child in such a horrible place of desperation and not knowing where to turn or where to get help from.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about Scientology being the cause of those things, if you're never able to live up to what you expect you need to live up to, and I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, you aren't able to ever feel pride for what you have accomplished, even though it may not be what you are told it should have been. You should always, no matter how small the accomplishment is towards what you want, you should be praised for that. But that never happened. So that was very, it was a big part of the formation of my childhood. And the more I think about it, the more it, not that it angers me, but it's becoming much more real, and I'm beginning to understand even more so how I was wronged.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that you're not allowed to do, is be a victim in Scientology, and that's probably my biggest issue trying to overcome, is just accepting the fact that things happen to me. I didn't necessarily cause it all.
And yeah, exactly. And when you're a kid, you don't have control over these things. It's something you're subjected to. And one thing my therapist said to me once was, your brain is still forming as a teenager, even when you're an adult, 18, 19, 20, like that, your brain is still forming and it's not fully formed. And the danger, this is what they said, of Scientology during those formative years is it genuinely does affect the way your brain processes information, right? It forms your neural pathways are still forming. So being in Scientology during that time, is they said to me, if you joined Scientology as a 20-something-year-old and were in for 5 years and came out, the damage it does to you mentally is not as bad as being in Scientology for a couple of years as a teenager, because your brain is still forming at that age. And I think that's something that I found really interesting. And once I kind of swallowed that pill, I was like, okay, well, let's look at actually what are my beliefs and my thinking on certain topics, and why do I believe that, or why do I think that? I did this when I started seeing a therapist, because when you're taught that psychiatry is the devil and you're going through something and you kind of, maybe I should see a therapist, that might help. It took me ages to be okay with accepting that I needed a bit of help. I was going through something, and because my brain was programmed to think that psychiatry and therapists and counselors don't help you and they're just going to put me on meds so they can control me, training myself to accept that, no, look, I'm not being a victim here. It's not a bad thing. Actually, it's okay to say, hey, I'm struggling here. I need some help and I don't know what to do. That is a huge step to take in recovery.
Yes, I completely agree. And I'm very proud that you were able to do that. And happy for you, because I understand it's the hardest thing to admit that you need help, and that the person that you need help from is the person you were told you should never go see.
Yeah, exactly. So. And likewise for you, speaking out publicly and sharing your story like this and being so vulnerable a huge thing, because you know you're not just going through it yourself and coming to terms with your story, but you're sharing that publicly with people on the
It's hard.
internet. It is hard, but it really does deserve merit, because by showing this to people who might be still in, that's going to be helpful, right? And people might be watching this and going, I totally relate to what Jeff was saying there. That's how I feel, or that's how I felt, or I grew up in Scientology and what he said there was exactly the same as what I'm going through. And that's, I think, why we're doing this, right? To help these people.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, it is somewhat selfish too, but I just don't want other people to have to deal with it, because I know how shitty it is. And if I can help, like I said, one person not do it or even get out, that's definitely worth it. The other advantage that I am learning daily is that it has opened up even more communication with my wife and myself, able to discuss it and maybe explore different avenues of potential recovery. So,
and I can attest your wife is a wonderful person, having spoken to her briefly yesterday. And there are loads of comments in the chat on our stream yesterday about how supportive your wife is and how she's really helped you with your recovery. And I can attest to that. She's great. And you're so lucky to have someone there by your side to support you through this. And it takes a lot for someone to show that unconditional love to help you through these times. So massive respect to her for that.
she is amazing.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about the psychiatry stuff before we maybe start wrapping up and doing some questions, if that's cool with you. What other stories do you have? Like, what was that like being a kid? You talked about psychbusting and doing protests, and what is there anything else of note that happened during that time? What you were going through as a kid on the streets championing Scientology's anti-psychiatry message?
Yeah, I mean, I also did. My dad was very anti-SP, people who would protest the org. And there was one person there. I probably won't mention his name, but you can find this information online. I recently found the story when I was doing a little bit of background research on the Vancouver org and various instances. And there was someone who was outside protesting, giving out Xenu flyers and so forth. And I was there. My dad was there. And as well as, I believe it was a woman, is all it's described as. And I believe I know who it is. But I was told to go get a gun so we can shoot this person in order to scare him away from protesting. But all he was doing was just giving out flyers, right? Like, he wasn't trying to break into the org or accosting anybody or hurting anybody. He was just standing there, just giving out flyers. And it was like, my dad said to me, go get the gun. We're going to shoot him. And there was some sort of physical altercation that occurred between those two people. It's all documented by the person who it happened to online. And when I was reading that, I was like, yeah, I remember the exact time when that happened, because it was outside the front of the org and I was there, and I remember him saying that. And I didn't really think anything of it, but pretty much guaranteed that was, obviously there was no guns, but it was a serious, like, a thought that would be great to do.
Like, not a throwaway, jokey, ha comment. Like, they were serious. If someone had a weapon at that moment in time,
I would
they
imagine
probably
so.
would have gone and grabbed it, right?
I mean, that's how much of a hatred there is. It doesn't. I mean, it's a human being out there trying to tell people the truth, and the response to it is, F this guy. Let's not even listen. And these are the people who are supposed to have the ability to openly communicate on any subject, confront everything.
Yeah. And how old were you when this happened? You were still a teenager, right?
I don't remember specifically how old. I think it was 93. Roughly. So I would have been like 11.
So they asked you, as roughly an 11-year-old, to go and get a gun so they could shoot someone for handing out flyers against Scientology.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it was necessarily against Scientology. I think it just said Xenu on it. I have no idea what the flyer said, but yeah, it's phenomenal.
Blows my mind.
But that's the kind of reaction that was happening, and that's the extremes that they would go to, because it's the worst thing in the world.
Well,
Right?
in keeping Scientology working, it says, it talks about win or die in the attempt, right? So Scientology is a deadly serious matter. It's not a laughing, joking thing. It's something that is really important. It's saving humanity, clearing the planet. These are really big goals and really important fights that we're taking on, is how, it was seen when we were in Scientology. So it's like, the idea of getting a gun and this sort of thing isn't like, it's not a joke, because these people are entirely serious about this sort of thing, because Scientology, that's why they take it all so, I don't know, mix up my words. This is why they take it so seriously, because Scientology is the only thing that's going to help humankind, right? Help mankind. So they're not going to just go, oh, let's just ask the guy to leave. No, let's get rid of, remove this guy, right?
Well, and he's not even causing a problem. Like, the problem is there, but only because Scientology is creating that problem. If you go outside of a Scientology organization, there's videos of it all over YouTube, and just even stand there, you don't even have to do anything. You get approached. Who are you? What are you doing? Who do you work for? They start taking pictures and videos, and instantly, if reception, which is the person right up front, sees someone doing anything, the Department of Special Affairs, that's the first call. I've done it. I used to be on reception. If there's someone standing out there that looks like they might be doing something suppressive, the first call is to DSA. The DSA comes down and they handle it. They stop people from going in the front of the organization, like public. You're not allowed to. They have a back door. If there's anybody out front, because they don't want people to know the truth about Xenu or anything about abuse in Scientology, they get sent out the back door. Back in the 2008 anonymous protests, there's video online in the Vancouver org where they were found out that the staff were going out the back door, and so people were protesting out there too, and so there's all kinds of confrontations, and yeah, it's pretty phenomenal.
We had a similar thing of, I didn't see too many protests, but we did have quite a lot of people handing out flyers and coming in saying, Xenu, you believe in aliens, all this sort of stuff. And as someone in Div 6, public book sales, we had two buildings. We had the test center and the main org. The test center was only ever like 2 or 3 people. Sometimes it was just me on my own as a 17-year-old, to get people in, take them on tours around the info center, sell them a book. And yeah, I can attest to what you're saying. It's very much the policy. If someone starts giving you grief, the first thing you do is call the DSA, who in London is Mark Pinchin. Hi, Mark, if you're watching, give me a call. Haven't spoken to you for a while. Hope you're okay. You call him and say, hey, what do I do? And he then gives you instructions of, okay, call the police, or hold on, I'll be there in half an hour, or, just try and get rid of the guy. You surrender your ability to confront anything and everything. It's down to OSA to handle, right?
Yep.
So,
and they're just drilled constantly on how to handle these people. That's all. It's pretty much all they do. It's their job, and yeah, it's got to be the most stressful job in the organization.
Oh, I bet. And I can't wait to hear more of these stories coming out from your channel. Do you want to cover anything else before we jump into Q&A, or do you want to?
No, I think we can answer some questions.
Okay, so guys, if you've got any questions, put them in the comments. We will try and go through them. There's some from earlier, Escaping the Controverse. Hi, Gabriel. Once again, just wanted to give her a shout out. Guys, if you're watching this, go and subscribe to Jeff on his channel. He needs the watch hours and the subscribers, so go and give him some SPTV love. Oh, did I cut out there? Am I back?
No, you were good. At least on my end, you were good.
Okie dokie. Then Jeff here with another great comment. How I wish schools were forced to teach critical thinking nowadays. It's such a key skill that you just don't have in Scientology, right?
No. And I think common sense.
Yeah, precisely. Ruth Orange, did LRH, being a fiction writer before inventing Scientology, create auditing Thetans and Xenu to see how many people he could con? A psychology experiment conducted by a psychopath. Ironic if so.
Can't necessarily answer that specifically, but I will say that back in the day, he did find out how to make $1 million, and that was to start a religion. So it was purely just a con to make money.
I don't know if it's my internet or your internet, but we're dropping out. Say that again. Sorry, Jeff. I don't know if it was my internet or your internet, but
yeah, no worries.
Well,
I'm connected directly to my LAN, so hopefully it's not mine. No, basically, so LRH, when he started Scientology, just prior to it, he is quoted to have said, "If you want to make $1 million, start a religion." Yeah, if you want to make money, start a religion. And so it was just a con all along.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan here. I hope you will work with Jeff on videos concerning Scientology in Canada. That was a question to Gabriel. I can't wait to see you two together on a live stream, because Gabriel, Escape from the Cultiverse, was the executive director of Vancouver org, and you guys worked together, right? Before.
Yeah. She wasn't executive director at the time when we were working together, but in the same org. And yeah, once she gets her setup all going, we'll do some lives right away. Apparently, it might be her sitting on her floor because she doesn't have a desk, but that's okay.
Yes, I think she put in the live chat earlier, she's waiting on the moving truck with all of her stuff. It should be coming tomorrow, so hopefully once she's settled in, we can set something up.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah, Selena, a big fan of the channel. Hey everyone, what do we have here? Gasp, 2 little ginger muffins. Goldie calls me ginger muffin quite a lot in the live chat, so that's a little reference to that.
You know what? I'm okay with that. If you can call me that too.
Well, now you're one of us. You're another ginger muffin. Like even Samaya here says you are definitely two long lost brothers.
I do need to say though, my wife didn't put this in the comments yesterday, but she takes a bit of offense. My wife's also technically a ginger, as you know, Alex. But she didn't put in the comments that I am actually a daywalker, and that is a ginger who doesn't freckle much on his face, so I can actually go out in the sun without just turning into a bunch of freckles. So
I find that interesting. I do have freckles, but they're not prominent on my face. But my
you
arms,
might be a daywalker too.
I have lots of like freckles on my arms.
Yeah, me too.
But not too many. Yeah, interesting.
So you're a daywalker too.
I like that term. I've never heard of that before. Alrighty, 1, 2, 3. Gedanken sind frei. Back then, you thought you would be saving the planet, and now you actually are helping people. And now you are actually helping to save people, actual people, from the actual abuse. Virtual hug.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and I'm so impressed and happy to have you here. We got a super chat here. Anti Harju, here's a bit more Alex. Thanks for existing. Thank you for the support and the super chat. If you guys want to support Jeff and his new channel, you can buy him a coffee. Is the link in the description on your
channel? And it's just buymeacoffee.com and then PTS for life. But it is in the description of my channel.
Amazing.
It's very much appreciated because this equipment isn't cheap.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question that's just popped up here. Carla B, do you remember how many public were on course or getting auditing when you were last there?
Yeah, so this is a good question. Not many. If you take out the staff and the staff in the course room, because there was only one course room, if I can remember, the max 20 people, at a time. There was definitely more people who were like signed up for course, but they didn't necessarily show up. Can't remember much more than that as far as amounts of people.
Yeah. I mean, that's not uncommon at a city level Scientology org. I spoke to someone recently who was in the org, without giving too many specifics away, let's say within the last 2 years, who confirmed there were 5 people on course or something at London org, which is meant to be one of the busiest, most important high traffic orgs in the world. So it just shows the state of Scientology these days.
I can't imagine it's any busier now in Vancouver. A lot of the people that I see who are still on staff, I know who some of them are, and they're old timers. They're not new people. I think there are a few newer, younger people, and I don't actually know whether they're second gen or not, but it's not busy, and it's just an aging population that once the older people leave or decide to retire or whatever, that'll be it.
Yeah,
Okay, I do
absolutely.
not have a soul, Andrea. That's my wife for everyone. Damn it.
We don't, and we're proud that we're fine with it. I'm not a Thetan. I'm a person. Gur Raw, great username. Jeff, why is the Vancouver Scientology building so dingy and not kept up? Not inviting at all. This is a major city full of actors. It doesn't make sense.
So that building is, I actually don't know the exact age, but it's probably about 80 to 100 years old. I don't think that financially it makes sense to do anything to it. I think they give it a paint job every now and then because it has changed colors. It used to be green and now it's blue. The only upgrade they've done to it was in putting up security gates. So because there's an alcove, a lot of people used to sleep in it because there's a larger homeless population just a few blocks away, and of course through downtown, there's a massive homeless population there, and a lot of times it would just smell like urine or something, and we'd have to wash it up every day. But also to keep all the since Anonymous started, to keep all the people out and away from the actual building itself, they've gated up everything. There's actually a video I was watching earlier about, and this is from about 10 years ago, 2013, I believe, where someone had gotten to a nearby building and taken some long lens footage. They were able to see inside the windows of like HCO in different offices. Yeah, big lack of security there. But they were taking footage of the bricks because it's an old brick building, and it's just falling apart. Like literally, they took pictures of bricks without grout around them, just waiting to fall down from 3 stories. In the back, I think it's actually like 3.5 stories tall. It's on a slope. It's just a shithole. The amount of roofing issues on that place, and people would always graffiti tag it and stuff, and it's just a constant. It just wouldn't make sense to patch up. They've been trying to get an ideal org for, well, since it started. What was that? 2000.
Early 2000s, yeah,
6 or something like that.
The first London opened 2006, and it was one of the first ideal orgs. So it would have been, the program would have started 2004 or 3 or 4 or something, and they bought the buildings 2005, opened the first one 2006.
Yeah, so 20 years they've been, raising money for this and just bleeding dry this small population of Scientologists locally. It's never going to happen, and if it does, it's going to be empty.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is, right? No matter what they tell the public, it's the biggest scam, and it's one of the reasons why I really decided to leave was just the sheer amount of money grab that happens there, and stories of the events of people just being made to increase their lines of credit just so they can donate, and they still don't have a building. Like, what's the rush?
Yeah,
and of course the Church of Scientology International has enough money just to buy every single org a new building sitting in the coffers, and probably just on interest that they make alone. So, and
interest it makes on loans to other organizations. I recently wrote on my blog Scientologybusiness.com about the fact that CSI, Church of Scientology International, loans money to the UK church for it to afford to exist, and then the UK church pays it back with interest. Currently, the UK church owes $100 million to Church of Scientology International, to Flag, to CC, Celebrity Center, and it's paying that money back with interest, like millions of dollars a year. The international church in the US is earning in just interest from the loans it's making to its foreign counterparts.
Oh, your audio just went away for me.
Oh, can you hear me? Hello. I can hear you okay. It says it's connected. It might just be my internet. Testing 1, 2.
Give me 1 moment. I'm just double checking everything's fine here.
It might just be an internet problem. I don't know. Guys, can you hear me in the chat? If you can hear me, let me know in the live chat. Yeah, Auntie is saying that audio is working fine. I can hear both.
I am sorry. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. Can you hear me now?
I've gone PTS.
Yeah, it's so
Okay, obviously
PTS.
my audio works because you laughed at that.
We can hear you fine. I don't know if yeah, we can hear you
You're not
fine.
muted, are you, Alex?
No. Everyone in the chat saying audio is all fine.
Well, I think I don't know what to do with it.
Well, it must be the BTs. Let's give Jeff a couple of moments here to try and sort it out. If he goes
Sorry,
to
guys.
the
I don't know what happened. My audio just completely cut out.
All right. Well, how about I text you? Hold on. Where are you?
Should I try and leave the studio and come back in?
Yeah, try that. Okay. In the meantime, we are going to try and wrap this up fairly soon because I know Aaron is live. I believe a few others are going on soon. Mike Rinder and Chrissy are coming on live later this evening as well. So we don't want to clash with any of that. We only have a couple of questions left in the chat. So let's try and smash through those. But in the meantime, if you want to support Jeff, you can go buy him a coffee, go give him a subscribe and a like on his PTS for Life channel that's linked in the description and in the live chat as well. And if you guys want to support me and my channel, you can buy me a coffee. I also have merch available. All the usual stuff, but the best way to support me and a channel on SPTV is to like, share, subscribe, comment, all that sort of stuff, because it pushes the video out to more people. And if you guys like reading stuff, you can always head to my new website, which is Scientologybusiness.com. I've been uncovering a lot of the financial records and accounts and all that sort of stuff. And you can go and see those documents on the website if you want to.
I'm back.
Jeff is back.
I can hear you. I have no idea what happened.
That was weird. People were saying in the chat they could still hear you. I could hear you as well. I don't know. It must have been the BTs.
Well, yeah. I went PTS, so it's fine. It's part of my channel.
And it's literally your name, PTS for life, right? We've got 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up. Wrap up. Anti Harju, question for Jeff. How do you feel your life could have been like if you'd never been indoctrinated in Scientology? And Alex, too, if you'd wish to answer that common question.
You know, I think it'd be a lot different. I think I have a lot more potential than what I have achieved. However, and I've been giving that a lot of thought. However, I think where I am now is where I need to be. I'm very happy. I have my amazing wife. I have a really good life. I have an amazing dog. And I don't think that, I think I could be in a completely quote unquote better position. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think I would say something similar. I mean, you can speculate all you want about what could have been, what would have been, what would have happened, what this would, but what's important is focusing on what has happened, where you're at now, and taking ownership for that and looking at, okay, well, I've had this experience. What am I going to make of that and make of myself afterwards? If I hadn't have been in Scientology, I would have ended up doing a completely different degree. I would have gone to university earlier. I probably would be doing something very, very different. I certainly wouldn't be here on YouTube talking about my experiences in Scientology. So it's ended up with me in a place that I never expected it to, and I wouldn't be here without Scientology. So it's interesting, but I think it all comes down to what we were talking about earlier of like, this is helping people, and that's ultimately what I wanted to do and why I joined Scientology. And it turns out I wasn't helping people, and now I actually am. And that's the kind of positive you have to look at, right?
Yeah, I will say really quickly here, I see someone said need to meet my doggo, Selena.
Oh yeah.
It just so happens that my dog has a connection to Scientology.
Oh my god, I forgot about this story.
Yeah,
go
and
on,
I will
they're
be
gonna
doing a
love
video
this
on that, so subscribe to my channel.
Okay, all right.
It's
so
fascinating, and any ex-Scientologists and of course non-Scientologists are going to think it's hilarious, as I think you'll attest, Alex.
Yes, I love this story, and I think you guys in the chat will love it too. So go and subscribe to Jeff's channel and wait out for that, because I found that brilliant. Last question is from Selena, actually. Question, going back to lost childhood. I have a friend who had a sort of second youth after transitioning gender, like making up the lost teen years. Do ex-Scientologists second gen have a similar thing?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can fully speak to that because I didn't leave as a teen necessarily, although I guess there was a gap where I wasn't involved. I never was able to, unlike someone who has transitioned, to make that transition from, in my case would be Scientologist to non-Scientologist or believer to non-believer. So I never really actually got that option. I could see that. I think anybody who is connected with any kind of high control group, if they leave it, they kind of rebel a little bit, and they might seek out to experience things kind of like a midlife crisis that they never really got to experience. So I imagine that's definitely a case for some people who left when they were earlier. I wasn't given that opportunity though.
I think it comes down to making up for lost years, right? Like, obviously, I'm not second gen, but I did definitely come to a point where I realized there was a lot of development mentally that I missed because I was so young when I was in Scientology, and it does kind of put a pause on your growth as a person, as a teenager. So when you come out those years later and you start doing that work, you realize, wow, okay, I've got to do this work now that most people do when they're a teenager that I didn't do, on figuring out these questions like who am I and what am I doing and all that stuff we discussed. So I think that's what I would say on it, is that, you know, it's a lot to go through, but you do find it, or I found it, empowering of like, wow, I get to go through this experience now that everyone else has had that I missed out on. Like, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to figuring out who I am and why I'm here.
Yeah. And I will say the feeling of leaving the Sea Org is pretty freeing. Not having to adhere to an exact schedule, line up for musters every single morning at 7 a.m. or whatever time it was, eat crappy cold eggs. Yeah, I can understand how that change would be very freeing. Yeah,
so absolutely. Jeff, thank you so much for our second live stream together, 2 days in a row. I can't wait to see what you're going to put out. And I'm already a big fan of yours on your channel. And anyone watching, if you want to go and support Jeff, buy him a coffee, go and subscribe on his channel. There's a link in the description and in the live chat. Anything you want to say before we end it off here, Jeff?
I just want to say thanks to everyone again. The community is so overwhelmingly kind and understanding and supportive, and that's why I'm doing it. So I do look forward to having more people jump onto my channel so I can share those stories and the secrets of the dog.
Amazing. I love it. Thanks so much, Jeff. Stay where you are. We'll have a little debrief after this. But for those of you in the chat, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time.